Well, in order to tackle low growth and increasing unemployment, South Africa needs to urgently redirect its strategy to industrialization. That's according to the University of Johannesburg's Industrial Development think tank. Professor Simon Roberts joins us now. Thank you so much for your time today. We hear a lot about the need for reindustrialization in South Africa. Is there much action actually in that regard at the moment?
Well, the report we've done has been looking at the patterns over the past 2.5 decades. It's a longer-term pattern. And it's saying that there really is an urgent need to place reindustrialization at the center of the development strategy. So we've seen the DTI with industrial policies, but what we're really saying is that reindustrialization needs to be at the heart of the economic policy and not something that just the DTI is involved in. Okay. It needs to cut across energy, minerals policy, telecommunications, etc., all the way across.
And we'll talk a little bit about what the result of the fragmentation has been on our actual industrialization. But maybe let's take a few steps back and talk about how we deindustrialized in the first place. What's happened over the past 2 decades?
So one of the main insights from the study is, in actual fact, looking back to the 2000s, when the commodity prices were very high. Prices of platinum, gold, iron ore and coal were high. And essentially we took that money and spent it as a country on imports of consumer goods. And instead of supporting local industries. And the currency was very strong. And we thought, this is great, the currency is strong, it's great to buy cheap imports.
Yeah.
But we deindustrialized. We lost a lot of capabilities during that period. And then when the financial crisis came, 2007, 2008, and commodity prices went down, suddenly we found out that we'd lost a lot of these industries. And it was very difficult for us to recover from.
Was it a South African phenomenon? How do other similar countries pair up?
So one of the things I think that is important to realize is that other countries faced similar issues, but we've done worse than almost all other middle-income countries. We've compared a number of countries. There are other countries, such as Brazil, who've also had challenges, but we've done worse. So it's not just that we faced the financial crisis, other countries did too, but we've not come out of that, and that's part of our industrial base that we've lost.
Okay, so let's talk some solutions. You've mentioned the fragmentation. What is the problem with that?
So we've seen over the past 10 years, really, a fragmentation of the state. Of course, there's been lots in the news about corruption and state capture as well. But alongside that has been a proliferation of different government departments. And what we're saying is, if you're looking at economic activity, it's manufacturing, engineering services, design services, the fourth industrial revolution. If we're going to take products and put them on the shelves in front of consumers all around the world, you've got to bring all these things together. And that means a number of departments all working together. And the more departments there are that have got to work together, the more difficult it is to have that coordination. And we're not seeing that coordination being very effective at all.
You also talk about the heavy concentration of our economy, which has also kept out anybody who has an innovation, anybody who's trying to do things differently. We've seen the Competition Commission trying to break up cartels and cartel-like behavior, but do we need to do a lot more of that?
So that's an important, very important point. And in fact, if you look back at the 2000s, the middle class felt like things were going well. We had the money from the resources. At the same time, there were all these cartels we can see now that were taking a big slice of the profits. So the Competition Commission really only started uncovering the cartels in 2009, 2010. They've been going on through that decade. And so now the question is, well, you can stop the cartels, but you create competitors. And we need those dynamic businesses because they bring different business models to come. They're the ones who come up with new ideas about product design, etc. So, and they'll make the incumbents more productive. So the incumbents will be productive if somebody is snapping at their heels. And so opening up the economy in terms of concentration is a critical part of improving productivity. And if we don't do that, we're not going anywhere in the long term.
What do we do about the workforce and our skills base?
So if you're competing on the merits, if you've got a business that is there that is trying to develop new products and you want to respond to them, or if you are that small business, you care about what your workforce is doing. So you have to train them. So you don't compete on unit labor costs being as low as they possibly can be. You compete on what your workforce can do. So you see small and particularly medium-sized businesses being the most dynamic and having the most potential to do that design, that innovation, the new business ideas. And that means that you're looking at your workforce as a resource. And you're able to pay higher wages as a result.
We talked about dealing with the business sector, and of course that's a very important thing. But what about macroeconomic policy?
So one of the things that it's, and hindsight is easy, of course, one of the things that is important, I think, to look back on is when we had the currency at 6 rands to the dollar, for example, we thought that reflected the competitiveness of our country.
Yeah.
Well, yes and no, because when it was 6 rand to the dollar, it was really cheap to buy your imported shoes, right? But that meant local businesses couldn't compete. So it was good for consumers, but not good for producers of tradable goods. And so, maybe we thought our economy is really strong and, it can justify that currency. But that's obviously not the case. So we were living in a little bit of a fool's paradise. And so if the currency was going to adjust, then we should have thought, well, maybe we shouldn't have let it strengthen so much in the first place.
Yeah.
That's where macro policy comes in. And a macro policy, we're saying, needs to look at a sustainable and competitive exchange rate. When the exchange rate strengthens because of resources, prices, that's not our education system improving. Okay. So we should actually be really careful about that.
We'll leave it there. Thanks for your time today, UJ Professor Simon Roberts.